Welcome back to ShopDog-Garage. Mr. Ollie's on his way to work here. It's Saturday. It's still January. I'm sure you notice I don't have a ton of snow. It's like 38 or 40 degrees out. It's really nice. So we're coming out, do a little work. I started some work last night, got flustered, didn't want to break things and throw things, so I quit. But the fender extensions came in. I started monkeying with those, got upset, and went inside. And we finished Blue Eye Samurai last night, which was really, really good. So anyway, let's get back to work. And I've spent about the last 10-15 minutes kind of looking over everything. And I think I'm at a point where the next thing I need to do is take the entire front end back off the car. So good thing I got hangers for the fenders. But I want to pull everything apart. And I need to verify that my core support is square and that my frame is square to the body before I do any further work. I'm on a 4-post lift. If I do have to shift anything, I'd rather do it now because I'm definitely finding a slight difference in the squareness of this opening. It's not tremendous. I mean, it's actually probably close enough. But maybe it could be closer. Okay, we've got the driver's fender off. Don't forget, we're still not happy here, but we'll get there. And keeping track of our shims. And one of the things I've already done is I loosen these two bolts and let this come down a little bit. That should help there. Starting to think about yanking these tires. I'm not sure yet. Haven't decided. Causes some other issues. On the upside, the weather's getting so good at some point I might be able to just roll this thing out and rinse it off real good. But you can see there was still a little work to do here. I know it doesn't look straight, but it actually is pretty straight. Getting ready to pull this side. The new extensions are probably going to be easier to modify. I want to get this one bolted up on the horse here though, so that I can really take a good look at it. We've got her back apart again, so let's see what we can learn here. I'm sure there's somewhere I can use as my locators. I'm thinking it's probably the same jig hole they used at the factory. And if I can get this hole on both sides square across and the same distance apart, then I can lock down the core support, and then we will make the fenders fit that. I grabbed a whole bunch of measuring tapes to show you the measurements I'm trying to make. This isn't actually how I'm doing it. I'm only using one at a time, but this kind of shows the concept. I have located a bolt in that jig hole. You know, it looks like that. I've located a bolt in the center of that jig hole. These jig holes, I found some head bolts that, you know, would gently kind of be persuaded to thread in. So I'm going from the jig head, or from the jig positions, and then right now what I'm showing you is what the diagonal against the shaft is for each one and what the distance to the top up there is. So like on this side, and this tape doesn't like to stay, you'll see we're what would we call that, 43 5/8 to the shaft. And when we come over here, we are 43 probably 7/16 to the shaft, which means this is either tilted more or literally more back. Based on what we have with the fenders, I'm assuming I'm going to have to move this corner back that way just a tiny bit, and this corner back a whole bunch. And I'll show you why in just a second. Remember when we were on on these, we were all the way off to the edge. So if I can move the whole core support back, so just for anybody that was going, hey, that doesn't match. Well, that's because what I think I'm going to try to do is get them both to 43 1/4. I think that'll give me the room I want here without it being under stress. The other thing to note is I'm also going to be measuring from the same shaft diagonally and using the same technique that I've been using, you know, finding a point on the bolt and doing it common. So on the outside of this bolt, it's 62.5. And I'm going to use the same tape for all measurements. This is just a demonstration. And you'll note here, it's not 62.5, it's 62 3/8, which means this whole thing is that way too much. So I've got to come this way. I've got to move this one back a bunch, well, you know, relative. That one back just a tiny bit, and then go from there. It's not that hard to move. We've got these guys loose right now. Remember, we raised those. That, I think, is going to help with everything else I'm doing. If I don't have something at a known distance, I think when it's time to square the hood up, I'm just going to chase myself. So this is actually pretty close to square, and it makes me feel a little better. And the core support does need to go that way, which was what we were fighting over here when we were trying to put the header on. So that actually works out pretty much where I expected it to. So this is the tape I'm actually going to use. It's nice, it's broad, it's stiff. So I'm going to go through. Let's get this squared up real quick. Tapes are back up. I haven't final tightened yet, but you'll see we're a lot closer. Suddenly we're at 62.5 on that diagonal. And what are you? 43.5 here. Let's go to this side, and you'll see right away 62.5 on that diagonal, and 43.5 here. This is square. Now the only thing I can't compensate for is if the core support wants to lean a little bit. I'm going to tighten these now and then make sure that those points are the same. As long as those points are square, if there's tilt or whatever else, that's a different problem. That's a different set of problems. Right now, I just need something square. As we predicted, tightening these did move things a little bit, so I had to do it twice. But now we still have our 62.5 on the diagonals on both of them. But now instead of 43.5, so there must be a little bit of lean, it's 43 3/8. So we can deal with that. It's a known. We now have something that we know what it is. And I think that's important. It may be time for a break. I'm sure you notice I have a original fender sitting here. Okay, so we've got, you know, it's not great, but I can probably work with it. I'm gonna have to do some drilling, obviously, because I've got this problem. Because this line and this line are supposed to be in plane. Yeah, when you look here, you can see that comes around, and I didn't spend any time lining this. Just literally was walking and putting screws in by finger. But you'll notice these mounting locations, they're in plane with each other. And that's because, and boy, this poor thing's been beat up. I'm gonna have to do some repairs here. But this bolt hole at the bottom of the extension, this bolt hole at the top of the extension. So that's the one at the top, that's the one at the bottom. Notice they're pre-threaded. That's great. And then you see this one that's pre-threaded up in the fender itself. That's that hole. Don't know if you noticed, but they're pretty roughly in plane with one another. And this one, good God, that's a giant gap. That's got to be 1/2 inch a gap or more. Let's grab a tiny tape. Keep lots of tapes on hand. You never know what's going to fit what you're trying to do. So, let's see here. Not only is that more than half an inch, that could be as much as 9/16 of an inch. Now some of it, I obviously can round that. And this is in a plane like this. These are in a plane like this. So I think the first thing I gotta do is pull this back apart and re-drill a little, you know, to make room for the clips, because I need to be able to slide this in quite a bit. I don't have one of my sticks handy because I really wasn't that far yet. So let's grab a stick real quick. Boy, where did they all go? There's one. Okay. So, and I haven't even looked at that one yet. So when I look here, you'll know the only spot it almost doesn't catch is right here, and that still catches a little. So I've got to get that in more. And yeah, I'd love to get it forward a little and in just a little here, in a lot here. So let me see what I can do. To take a break and do a few things. And one of those things was to go get the frame, because you have much to learn, young pollywog. Okay, so we're kind of checking the other one before I get too crazy over there. I found some washers that are about the same thickness as those brackets. So I'm using that as just a rough spacer. And you'll see I've got work to do here. In fact, you can really see it there. But I don't know that this is going to be as bad as the other one. Obviously some profile work here, but that's going to happen during body work. So at least this one I think is only a couple hours messing around to get that one to line up. This one, even now, I've got some work to do. These aren't even in the same plane, and there's something misfolded here. Remembering, this driver's fender's been nothing but a hassle. There's still a lot more to go here, but this is getting closer. So we're just trying to fit it as best we can. Remember, this is upside down, but I just held the lower valence up to it to make sure, and there's a big gap here, so I'm probably going to be cutting that. Makes me nervous. Not really big fan of doing that. So I'll look and see what we can do, but I don't think I can hammer that in any, but we'll see. Luckily, you know, I mean, literally the bumper is here, so it's probably not critical, but it's a good area for me to work on my skills. Just took another pass at the driver's side. We're getting closer, but boy, this is gonna be a nightmare. You can see it's like that went over and they bent it in the wrong spot and welded it anyway. Looking at both of these fenders, I'm gonna wind up drilling out that spot weld and trying to get that folded in a little more and then re-welding it. Same on this side. This side's even worse. You can almost throw a small rodent in there. So I should be able to get that a little more acceptable. What I've got to find out though is, does this plane move down also, or does this plane have to move up? Not sure how to figure that out. Because remember, when we look at these guys, they're pretty in plane with each other. And that's not any adjustment or anything. I just threw them on there real quick by hand. So I think this is what we're going to try to replicate though. I wish I knew what I could measure against, but I can't think of anything. I may actually wind up throwing this extension on. No, actually, I will throw that extension on this fender and see where it falls. I know this won't be nice, but where does it fall relative to that? That'll tell me some things. And, you know, I do understand that this is hidden by the bumper anyway, but, you know, if you're not going to put work in the spots no one can see, how are you going to do the work in the spots people can see? Little time has passed, not much. I think I'm going to wrap for tonight. I'm going to shut a few things down. I'm getting flustered. I don't want to make expensive mistakes. So I'm going to walk away from this for tonight, and we will come back at it tomorrow and see what we think. But it is going to be easier to make these fit than the originals. I mean, the profiles weren't even close because, you know, Goodmark can't make stuff that's accurate. I really, really, really don't want to have to start over. So I'm going to step away, and then tomorrow I'll come back. I'll hang both of the aftermarket lowers on the GM fenders to figure out which plane is correct. You know, is this plane correct or is this plane correct? So hanging those on here, getting this contour here to match, that'll tell me, because if they're also gapped in, well, then I know I got to build that out. If they're equal, then I know I have to subtract on this one, which honestly, looking at how this is put together, I think that's what's going to wind up happening. I have a feeling that this inner here is not as far off as I think. It's just because this excess metal here. And this one also had that. And remember, I had to take a giant wrinkle down. I know I didn't show that. I'm sorry. But there was some pounding and some filing here. And then these little fiber discs that go on the Whizzy wheel, they sure do a good job cleaning this black stuff off. So anyway, thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll come back at this tomorrow.